So, you think you might be a type 9 on the Enneagram, but you're not sure and you still have some questions. The great news is that's a perfect place to start asking questions and going deeper. The Enneagram is all about understanding a person's core motivations. If you think of it like this, imagine an iceberg. Now, when you look at an iceberg, you really just see the tip of it. You have no idea how big or what's underneath the surface. Now, that's similar to a person's personality. On the surface, we can see how people behave. For example, I can see whether a person is the first to go to pick up to pay for a check at the end of a dinner, or if a person is quick to correct someone's grammatical mistakes. Those are behaviors that we witness. What we don't see is why. Why did that person reach to go and pay for the bill? Why did that individual feel the need to correct that person's grammar? What's motivating it? The Enneagram is a tool that provides a map of how 9 distinct types navigate the world by understanding their core motivations, fears, desires, blind spots, and ultimately their default programming. Because once we understand our default programming, we don't have to default to it. Or another way of putting it is the Enneagram is about getting you out of the box of your own personality. It's not about putting you in one. Unfortunately, we're all already in a box of our own personality. So, in this video, I'm going to look at 3 things regarding the type 9. I'm going to start with what's most important, and that is understanding the 9's core motivation. The motivation will have to resonate with you if you are a type 9. From there, I'm going to walk you through a checklist. I might be a type 9 if. Then I'll touch on what I call my type 9 cheat sheet. At a very high level, how does a 9 show up in the world? From there, hopefully, you will have a good idea on if a type 9 is a type you should explore deeper, if it's what I would call your home base. And then I'll close out with, so now what? So you're not left hanging. So with that, let's look at our type 9's motivation. The motivation for a type 9 is all about maintaining inner and outer peace, feeling the need to avoid conflict. The fear is that if I engage in conflict, then it'll cause separation, or I might lose connection with important people in my lives, or it might just disrupt my overall inner flow. Ultimately, that desire for the 9 is to be okay, to have inner peace, to maintain harmony in their environment. The nomenclature, the title for a type 9 is the mediator. The type 9 is not just about avoiding conflict. That is a means by which a 9 leverages to ensure that they're okay. In working with the Enneagram for as long as I have, oftentimes I see people mistype when it comes to the 9 because they think, well, I don't like conflict, so I must be a 9. And there's so much more to that. You are a 9 if it's more important for you to go with the flow, maintain that peace, than exert yourself. In fact, it can be really hard for a type 9 to even know what their own desires are. They will naturally default to seeing everyone else's point of view. So, if this is resonating with you, let's walk through the checklist. You might be a type 9 if you avoid conflict to maintain peace. You struggle to assert your own needs or opinions. You often go along with what others want. People describe you as easygoing and calm. You crave inner peace and dislike chaos. You sometimes forget what you want or need. You tend to adapt to others' desires or their overall rhythms. You procrastinate when faced with difficult tasks. You avoid dealing with difficult emotions. You seek acceptance and fear disapproval. Now, if you're checking off on each one of these and everything that I talked about with the core motivation resonated with you as well, you're probably on a pretty good path. Now, a good distinction to make when it comes to a type 9 is a 9 is not going to proactively go out of their way to take care of others' needs, but rather they will reactively be available for people. 9s tend to be more in a withdrawn stance. As a result, this is how they show up in the world. This is your type 9 cheat sheet. Their overall demeanor is easygoing and very harmonious. They often tend to be very likable individuals because they don't ever assert themselves in a cantankerous or disgruntled fashion. Their communication style is inclusive and diplomatic. They want to know what every single person thinks and feels. The way they make decisions is by being considerate of everyone and taking an overall consensus. I remember I was working with a couple and it was a type 6 and a type 9. And the 9 said, sometimes we'll get in an argument and she, who was the type 6, my partner, she will make such good points that I start to forget why we were arguing or why I was arguing with her because it was so compelling. It was so easy for him to see her point of view. The blind spots become overall complacency and a desperate need to avoid conflict. Although it's important to note, even though 9s avoid conflict, they still fall into the body center, which I have a video on the 3 different centers of intelligence if you want to know more about that. But because they fall into the body center, they are oriented to anger. But 9s have totally gone asleep to their anger. So rather than getting angry, their anger will leak out in forms of passive aggressiveness, or they might silently disagree with you. If you give a 9 a task and you don't get their buy in, they'll smile and they'll nod and they'll acknowledge what you're saying, but it doesn't mean they're going to do it because 9s are the most stubborn of all 9 types and don't like to be pushed into a corner. In fact, their pet peeves are conflict and pressure. How others see that 9 is accepting, supportive, very easygoing. The challenges become, for a 9, taking initiative. Now, a stereotype of type 9s to push back on, 9s are not lazy. In fact, 9s can be very active in doing a lot of things. The question becomes, are they doing the right things or the important things? Or are they making themselves busy with other tasks to avoid what they really need to do? In the right-hand side, you'll see the Enneagram symbol, the model, and that type 9 at the top with 4 other numbers. And I'm not going to go in depth on this because this is just that overview of a type 9, but you will see the 9 interacts with an arrow to 3 and an arrow to 6, and then has access to a 1 and an 8. That could be their wings. They can go to either a 1 or an 8. And I'll go much more in depth with this later, but I think it is helpful to start to see how each of the 9 types interacts not just as their home base, but with the other types as well on the Enneagram model. Now, again, it's important to note, you can be a type 9 that still might have a direct communication style at times. Because let's say you grew up in a household where that was really important. Now, the direct communication style is just a behavior. It's not the motivation itself. You are a type 9 if the thing that motivates you is a desire to maintain inner peace, to have harmony, to avoid conflict and separation. So, Hopefully that was helpful in giving you that overview of how a type 9 shows up in the world. But now what? You want to go deeper. Here are 3 things you can do. Start by studying. Learn more. The Enneagram is a lifelong journey, one that I've been on myself for 13 years now. And I continue every day learning more, reading more, I went through a certification program, working with a coach, all because it's not just take a test and learn my type. It's how do we apply it? So again, we can get ourselves out of that box. So here, some of the resources I recommend are Beatrice Chestnut's book, The Complete Enneagram, or Don Riso and Richard Hudson's book, Personality Types, Using the Enneagram for Self-Discovery. If you're a podcast person like myself, some really good podcasts to listen to are the Enneagram 2.0, Enneagram IRL in real life, and Typology. They are all a great resource. And then explore deeper. Once you do know your types, so once you do know if you are a type 9, take it deeper, subtypes. And I have a video on this as well because I think it's so important to understand what your subtype is, whether it's self-preservation, social, or one-to-one. Dive into those 3 different centers of intelligence. Now, the 9 falls into the body center. So how does that show up in the world? How do those arrows work that I was just talking about on the previous page? Well, what does it look like when a 9 goes to a 3 or goes to a 6? How do I do that well in order for long-term sustained growth? And lastly, a very simple but effective practice of self-observation. The way you self-observe is to simply observe your behaviors without any judgment. You're sitting in a meeting, someone cuts you off and has another idea. Observe how you react. Did you not get offended at all? Did it not bother you that you were just cut off and you didn't get to finish your thought? Were you really upset that you were just cut off? Did you have some choice words, some choice thoughts? Without any judgment, start to observe those behaviors in your life. How do you show up for the other people? How do other people show up for you, and why? This self-observation will lead to reflection that can ultimately help you grow. So I'm going to leave you with a story of a type 9 because I love bringing to life each of the 9 types. I was working with a team. I work with individuals and teams, and I was working with a team. And at the time, they were right at the launch of a new product. And it was the CEO, the CFO, and the COO. Now, the CEO was a type 8, and he had a big vision, a broad vision, a very aggressive go-to-market strategy. And their chief operating officer, their COO, was a type 5. And he was calculating the risks, and he was just saying, it's not going to work. We can't cut it. This is too aggressive of an approach. We need to conserve our resources because we're a small company. And they were going toe to toe. And then you had our CFO, a type 9. And as he sat there listening to them both argue their point of view, their opinion, he heard what they both had to say. And he saw the validity in each of their stances of why it was important, why they needed to go to market, and they did need to be big and bold. You need to spend money to make money. But he also recognized where the chief operating officer was coming from and saying, we really don't have the resources or the manpower at this time to go to market. And he sat and he thought, because it's really important with 9s, you give them time to think and process, because 9s don't always know what they think in the moment. What they have to do is take in your question. They need to kind of, as I would say, digest it. It needs to go down their esophagus, go into their gut, because they fall into that body center, and really figure out, what do I think about this? And when that CFO finally had time to reflect, he took both of their ideas and melded them with a beautiful solution. They could go to market with not as aggressive of a plan and still stay within the means of their current bandwidth, their manpower, their resources, so that they could win. A beautiful depiction of what mediation and what compromise can look like in a really stressful situation. And that's what nines do. It's how they show up is they see the world, they see what others see, and they're able to bring all those thoughts together. Now, what's important if you're a type 9 is don't lose yourself along the way. Make sure you still stay rooted in who you are and getting in touch with your true self, because you are just as important as everyone else. And I hope that resonates with you when I say that. You are just as important as everyone else. So make sure you are given a seat at the table and that your voice is heard, because it's so valuable. I hope this was a helpful video and look forward to you getting an opportunity to see more of my videos in the future. Thank you so much.